All right, welcome everybody to YouTube, to the podcast, to all the different platforms. I'm Charlie Marlow. That's Martin Montana. This is the first ever I Called That. We're calling it, Martin, I Called That.
I called that because basically, we're those guys. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm a guy. I'm not. I was literally looking at while I was watching the Bucks game, saying I knew they were going to blow them out. I should have bet on this game. Like, that's a typical, like, oh, I called it. I knew it, and I didn't know it because if I was so sure it was a lock, why didn't I just put some money on the game? And
exactly.
I didn't. And I didn't, but yet I felt confident that as I'm watching a score that's basically already done, I was like, see, I knew that was going to happen.
See, this is what I like about what I think this podcast is going to become. And we'll do intros and all that. But you made me think here about after the fact gambling guy.
Yeah.
Who I really don't appreciate, especially on Twitter, because I love gambling on sports. I'm into it, and I'm not trying to say I'm very good at it, but I enjoy it. And in a given year, if you lose a couple bucks, the next year you win a couple bucks, you break even, you had a lot of fun. And sometimes I'll put picks out there, and look, maybe I'm around 48%, 53%. You're usually around 50-50, but it's that person that they wait till the game it's now a 21-point game. They don't do it at halftime when it's tied. They wait until the final buzzer to go back to your tweet from 3 hours prior to tell you how bad your bet was after the fact.
Yeah. And then they come in with, the up-to-date terms, I'm fading Marlow. Everybody fade Marlow, right? It's like, come on, guy, relax. You're the guy chiming in like after Derrick Henry was hurt and being like, no way. It's like, and I'm the same with you. It's purely entertainment. And that's also why I sort of have an addiction to running like 5 to 6 team parlays, which is just it's a lottery ticket, but if you hit any of them, like they stand out in my mind, even if it was like from 2 years ago. So I'm with you. I mean, this whole idea of like, you were wrong. It's like, buddy, no, I didn't come out here saying I'm making my life, my living, my livelihood by picking the Eagles. Like, I'm just saying, like, this is what I think is going to happen, period.
And the other part about this is these spreads, look, Vegas usually knows what they're doing, but not all the time. You look at that Monday Night Football game, that was a 3.5 point spread, and the Rams end up destroying the Cardinals. So a lot of these lines that are around 3 end up being ridiculous blowouts. Look at the Bills Patriots. So
that's right.
None of us we don't really know what we're doing. Even the sharp money, they're right more than they're wrong. But our buddy Todd Furman the other day, I remember watching him, and he said that the smart money, the sharp money, was on the Eagles getting 7.5 points. How did that work out? So
how did that work out?
The goal is just to hit about 54-55%.
That's why you got to fade the sharps, Charlie. Trust me.
No doubt. All right. So let's do a quick intro for folks that don't know either of us or one of us or the other. So I'm Charlie Marlow. I'm here in St. Louis in my basement in my daughter's playroom here, which I tried to make sure you couldn't see toys and all that. But I was a TV sportscaster for about 17 years, 14 years at the Fox station in St. Louis. I've done sports talk radio. So now I'm doing sports talk radio full time, along with a lot of YouTube on my YouTube channel, which is Charlie Marlow and 590 The Fan KFNS. I'm also running some YouTube channels for the former NASCAR driver, Kenny Wallace, and my radio partner who played in the NHL, Cam Jansen. So that's what I'm doing. And then we got the comedian, Martin Montana here.
That's right. That was a good intro. And you really, you didn't even pause to breathe. That was impressive. I'm Martin Montana. Me and Charlie know each other more from probably being in Vegas, hanging out with no agenda other than hanging out. So this is going to be fun. But I've been doing stand-up, I guess, now like 14 years, coming up 15 years, which is crazy to say that. But I do stand-up, perform clubs. I do a lot of corporate gigs now, do a lot of voiceover. I had a campaign that ran for a while for Shock Top, the beer. And I'm a sports guy. So I was hosting shows in Vegas through Caesars, the Renegade Show, and some other different private events and some stuff with Matthew Berry from ESPN. So I'm a fan. I am not a sports expert by any means. And that's the best part. I got no accountability or liability. I can just, I can just say what I think. And if it's wrong, it doesn't matter. I don't feel guilty for 1 minute. But that's what this podcast is. And Charlie, I do have to say, our timeliness couldn't be better. I mean, if there's a year to start a brand new podcast, I think it's 2022. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, and nobody else is doing a podcast.
There's no podcasts.
I haven't heard of anybody else that does a podcast. I think my mailman has a podcast.
That's right.
My garbage collector has a podcast. So, all right, we're going to talk a lot of sports, NFL, MLB lockout. But let's start with some fun stuff. We were throwing around topics, and you said recently here. So we both have kids. It's my daughter's birthday actually. She turns 4 today. So happy birthday,
Today.
Janie May.
Happy
Today.
birthday.
We got to have a fun time tonight. But you said recently you had to take your daughter to a crowded sports bar.
Well, I wanted to watch some. So I live in Tampa, Florida now, and I left the West Coast, and I wanted to watch some of the Bucks game. But my daughter, she's a year and a half. So as you know, you got limited windows. Like it's all you like live around their sleep schedule, their nap schedule, food. So she wakes up from a nap, and I'm like to my wife, I'm like, well, let's go somewhere local and catch part of the game. And we get it. The best option was this Irish bar where they, and I got to give them credit. They were blasting in-game audio at airplane level amounts. And I was like, see, I like that. Or I used to like that, running around drinking. But then I realized we get in there, we strap her in her seat, and I'm like, we're the only people here with a kid. I mean, there's no other kids to be seen, to be honest. And she did fine, but I got the backpack with all the toys and the pouches and the things. And, I mean, we watched half of the game and it was fantastic. And I got to drink beer and it felt like a normal person again, but it made me think am I the oddball or was that a normal thing to do?
So this is interesting because I think you want to be social, and I love my children, but also sometimes it's such a process to leave the house. And I love going to a sports bar and all that. Even now, hell, I barely watch games because it's hard for me to get access to the TV. If I want to watch a game, no, it's got to be Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. It's got to be Mickey Mouse Clubhouse and all that. But sometimes just leaving the house, and not just leaving the house for, as you said, going to watch a game for dinner. But we went back to Ohio, where I'm from, for Christmas. And the amount of baggage that you have once you have the first kid, now we have 2 kids. I swear to God, it took me an hour to pack the truck up because you have all of the high chairs, the special seats. You have this for the 4-year-old, you have this for the baby. And that's where I was joking with my buddy on the radio recently about how when you have kids, your home, it doesn't really become a home anymore where,
No.
I have that nice couch, I have that nice table. It's just full of baby apparatus.
Yeah.
All the chairs, the swinging chairs, the feeding chairs, the sleeping, the crib, the mini crib. Like if you look around your house, it's just kid stuff everywhere. Your home, and if you had an interior decorator, no, it's just kid stuff and random toys sitting there.
So we moved into this house basically Thanksgiving. We still have half of the garage with boxes of our stuff unpacked. Meanwhile, my daughter Eva has a full playroom, fully decked out, hundreds of things, and her own bedroom, fully decked out, closet. I'm like, we're not even unpacked. And she's got multiple options. You know what I mean? And by the way, sidebar on what you just said about 2 hours to pack the car. I always compare my childhood to now. And I mean, I grew up in the 80s. Like, do you really even think for 1 second our parents left the house with more than just their wallet and maybe some diapers or something? I have a really hard time thinking my dad wore a backpack with diapers in it. I don't even think he changed me.
Well, think about the cars that we rode in, that we drove. Also, everything from a safety standpoint, you would go out there on a playground and a slide would have metal charge on it.
That's right.
That you could cut yourself, and nobody even cared. Nobody said, "Oh, let's fix that." There was rust everywhere. I remember we grew up, we were, like it or not, we were a station wagon family. So we had multiple station wagons. We had an old burgundy one of the box looking one. We never had a Woody, but then we had the more I think it was a Caprice Classic where it did look more like spaceship. But you know that station wagon, the third seat, you sat facing backwards, and we never wore a seatbelt.
No, never,
Never.
never,
And by
never.
the way, we were a family that you're supposed to be safe. So if we're sitting in the first two seats, we wore a seatbelt. But we sat back there with no seatbelt. I mean, doing God knows what. My brother and I just beating each other up the whole time.
Well, and so I remember you would sit, if the car was full, the little one would sit in the front, like, remember it was like bench seats even in the front, right? So you would just sit in that middle thing that wasn't really a seat, but you could sit there in the front part. The youngest would always sit there. Or if you were a certain age older, you'd go to the way, way back. So you would just basically half lie down in that part of it. Cause we had station wagon too. You would just kind of, right. They'd be like, you go back, and you would just have to, huddle back there. And that would be it for an hour, 2 hours. Like that was it. Imagine that. Imagine that now. If you saw a kid in the back of a station, you'd be like, they're kidnapping that kid. Like you wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe it. That's normal.
I think what's also funny. So you and I have been texting and calling a lot the last couple weeks, couple months as we're getting ready to launch this podcast. Again, not a lot of people have podcasts. We're one of the only ones out there.
That's
It's just
right.
funny also how your friends evolve through the years. Where back in the day, so you and I, we have hung out a lot in Vegas, but we first met Dewey Beach, where everybody back in the day having a heck of a time. We're drinking all weekend,
Yeah.
partying, not sleeping. I remember both of us were laughing because we both had jobs where you have to talk. I'm on TV and radio, you're a comedian, and we both lost our voice immediately. We're trying not to lose our voice, but we're drinking nonstop. We're partying. It's a great time. And then we text here recently. We're having conversations about our kids' allergies. You have an allergy. I go from
That's right.
Dewey Beach in Vegas of drinking all night and loving it. And now I usually crack one beer, finish it. I crack the second beer, and I usually fall asleep. And I wake up at 3 a.m. and I realize that 87% of my beer is still in the can, and I have to throw it away. So that's how my life has changed from about the 10 years I've known you.
That's pretty good. I mean, that's a great visual. So your wife doesn't even wake you up. She's like, I'm out. You sit there, you slob.
Pretty much. She goes to bed earlier. I'm like, no, I'm gonna finish watching this Netflix documentary, but I immediately fall asleep. And then it's usually that 3 a.m. where you kind of
Yeah.
you go to the bathroom real quick, and then you finally go to bed.
So let me go back to the sports book, our sports bar thing. I mean, I have no guilt about bringing her there. I didn't even think we really got too many looks because they weren't like kids like going nuts. So I think that's perfectly like a normal thing to do.
Yeah, I would do that 100%. Plus, you
Yeah.
have to get out of the house, man, especially during COVID.
Yeah.
Man, like the last couple of years, I mean, we were getting takeout nonstop, but sometimes you do have to just go somewhere else. And also just cooking for yourself here, you got to go somewhere else. You got to get out and about. And yeah, no, we did that a lot more, I have to say, with our first kid in terms of taking our daughter out. It's just
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, man, I don't know if you end up having a second one. The second kid is just a game changer because again, like if you break it down statistically, there's no chance, there's 0% chance that both of your kids are going to act okay for, let's say, an hour and 15 minutes. You have zero chance. You have zero chance.
That's a good statistical analysis. I don't know where you got your numbers, but it actually makes sense, right? You're right. You're doubling your chances of disaster, and you actually need them both to be on point at the same exact time for the same amount of time. You're right. I mean, that's tricky. That's a tricky ask.
And the funny part is, so back in the day, you'd go out to dinner with your wife and you want to enjoy yourself. Maybe I get an appetizer. Hey, we'll
Oh,
wait a
no
little
way.
bit. We'll have a couple drinks. We'll do the appetizer. We'll enjoy it. Entree. Maybe we do dessert. It'll be a process. It'll be 2 hours. Whereas now, the strategy is from the second I sit down, you say to the waitress or the waiter, I need something immediately. I need chicken nuggets 5 minutes ago. I almost want to order them before I get here because if my daughter is not eating immediately, she's going to ruin it for everybody.
Right. Right. I mean, I hope you don't get there where you're calling ahead to your local Chili's. Like, okay, well, we're pulling up. Yep. Just get the nuggets right. I don't want that for you, but I'm not. Yeah. I mean, I could see it. It actually is. It could be a game changer. Maybe you're going to be onto something like call ahead for your screaming children.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me though, because I feel like when when I got married and had kids, I feel like I had a pretty good idea of what I was signing up for,
Yeah,
right?
me too.
And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
had
yeah.
look, man, I had a lot of fun, and don't get me wrong, I'm still having fun. It's a different kind of fun. I think both of us, we waited a little bit to get married. I got married basically right before I was turning 35. I had lots of fun, traveling, trips. And so it's still fun. It's just different. So
Yeah.
having the kids, like I pretty much knew what to expect. I mean, not exactly on the day to day, but I grew up with two brothers and a sister. So it doesn't surprise me that, look,
Yeah.
it's not about me anymore. It's not about me, what I want to do whatsoever, what I want to watch, what I want to eat on any type of timeline. Like that's out the window. It's gone.
Yeah. It's totally gone. Yeah. Well, to give you an example, it was my birthday the other day. Thanks for your note and gifts. Um,
Happy birthday on
yeah.
Facebook. Did I have to make sure I go ahead and say happy birthday on Facebook. Otherwise, we're not really friends.
Here's what I did on Facebook. Cause I'm not, we've had this conversation. I guess I'll play around with Instagram a little bit. I have Facebook, but I'm not into it. And that was a positive, maybe leaving LA where like, I remember like some of the people I worked out there and some of the agents and stuff were like, you got to have a presence and I'm like, sure, kind of, but there's a natural way to do that. And there's a not natural way to do that. Right. Like if you naturally do it and whatever, you have traction and people are interested, cool. But there's a lot of people that are doing this like formula of like what they think they need to do. And to me, I'm like, no, I'm all set with that. So I don't go on there too much, but I saw all the, Facebook happy birthday messages. And I was like, you know what I'm going to do? It was maybe like 80 messages. I'm like, I'm going to literally go and like every single comment. It's going to take me 5 minutes. And I did that. And then I was like, was that weird or was that showing appreciation? You know what I mean? Because like then everyone's like, well, he's got a lot of time on his hands. He can just go back through everybody's comment. But I didn't actually comment back. I just hit like.
Yeah, I always do that. I've done that all
Yeah.
the time. I think if people, it's once a year. I'm not really on Facebook much anymore. I think it's good for kids and all that. Back in the day when you're single, okay, you're looking at different girls and all that. Now it's more about family pics and all that. But
Yeah.
I've always done that. And also, this is not necessarily related, but in terms of your social media, I've read, especially on YouTube here, that for engagement, you're supposed to actually like and reply to every single comment. So I
Right.
actually do that on YouTube. I have replied, unless somebody's real mean, real inappropriate, and they get real nasty. I reply and like every single comment because my channel is not that big yet. However, the channel I'm running for Kenny Wallace, the NASCAR driver, it's blown up so much that I literally can't do that anymore. I did that at the beginning, but it's growing at a point where if I liked and replied to his comments, I would have no time to do anything else in life.
Yeah. I mean, right. That makes sense. It's sort of like you got that many people interacting, like, that first window is where you're like, sure, let's respond. And then you got to go live a life. You know what I mean? But yeah, so I mean, I did that, but I don't know. I guess if they took the time to write something, even though you know how this goes, some people you're like, how do we know each other? Like maybe we met once at a comedy show like 5 years ago or something. Like that's nice of you, but like I don't go write happy birthday to anyone really. But I'm like I hate saying it, but I wouldn't do it to you because I don't really know you that well.
That's what's really funny to me about Venmo. I think Venmo is the weirdest because however they get all of your contacts, I feel like it's basically anybody you've ever
Yeah.
emailed or you've stored their numbers. So again, you're what, 43? I'm about to be 40.
Yeah.
So I've had a cell phone since my sophomore or junior year in college. This is obviously we didn't grow up with cell phones like the kids now do. But I mean, so
Yeah.
basically any contact you've had, whether it was back when you're 22, a friend, an ex-girlfriend, somebody you met when you're 25, I see all of those random people on Venmo paying for their babysitters and paying for their fantasy football entry fees. And then I'm like, wait, how do I know that person? And then I look
Right.
at the picture. I'm like, I still don't know you. I still don't know you. And I think you're in my contacts in my phone.
But why don't they make that private? I never got that. Why would you use it like a social board? Like, hey, here's, here's who I bought my weed from. Like, what? I mean, why is that like, why is that
That's,
like a,
yeah, that's a great point because I always try to think about my behavior on social media to try to not embarrass myself. Now, I like to have fun on Twitter and be sarcastic. So every once in a while, I'll step in it. But yeah, there's a lot of embarrassing posts on Venmo. And I'm almost like, okay. And by the way, I'm not trying to shame anyone, but really, did you have to split the taco? I mean, I get it. Did you have to split the coffee? Okay, I understand. Maybe you give somebody $3 or whatever, but I feel like we're really breaking down very, very small value items now.
Yeah, like was there no chance you guys were gonna go get tacos again, and then maybe, you could pick it up the next time?
Right. That's how we did it in our generation. If you get this tab, I get the
Yeah.
next one. But then you always have the friend that they never reciprocate, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, right. Always next. And then well, they come around and then they're like out, they don't show up that time or something. It goes back a turn. Yeah.
That's I'll get you back. I'll get you
Yeah.
back. That's your guy right there. Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't let's get into some sports topics. NFL. I've been watching a lot of NFL recently,
Mhm.
especially with the playoffs. You're down there in Tampa.
Oh yeah.
It's Tampa Tom. First of all, what's it like living down there with Tom Brady and everything going on, winning the Super Bowl last year and have a chance to do it again? It has to be pretty fun down
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot, I'll tell you, like there's a lot of Bucks flags, decals, all around the place, license plates. I mean, I wasn't here for the Super Bowl last year, but I mean, they're into it. The question is, were they, where were they like 5 years ago or whatever, but they're into it. They really are. And people are telling me here, I haven't been to a Lightning game, but they're telling me like, that's the ticket. Like that they're super hardcore about the Lightning. And then obviously, what's going on with the Rays. Are they going to be the Rays / Expos again or what? So that's a whole confusing situation because I mean, there was talks of building this new stadium in this area called Ybor City, and they've tried like 500 times to get approvals and this and that. And I think it'd be a sad day if that team splits time or leaves. I mean, to me, splitting time is the same as leaving. Like, I don't know how you have a baseball team, a professional team that shares with another city. You know what I mean? Like that's a little odd, but I mean, the sports here are booming because they're winning. They've got teams that are like killing it across the board. So, yeah, I mean, it's cool.
I think also, I forgot when you said that, I forgot how Tampa's winning everything now. We have
They're winning everything. Yeah.
a guy from St. Louis, Ben Bishop, was the Lightning goaltender several years ago. And then Pat Maroon, who's won 3 straight Stanley Cups. He's also from St. Louis, won a cup with the Blues in 19. Then he goes down to Tampa and has won the last couple of years. So he's just winning the cups nonstop. And so you mentioned the Rays. Yeah. If you're going to split time with a city, you're basically eventually leaving. You might as well just rip off the Band-Aid and leave. I hate to say it. But also,
yeah, I mean, what's your real take on that? Like if the Cardinals, this would never happen. If the Cardinals tomorrow are like, we're sharing with time with Seattle, blah, 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 blah. I mean, are you like, see you later? Would the fan base literally be like, see you later, or would they stick it out?
Well, so that's a good hypothetical. I will say though that the St. Louis Cardinals, they're so woven into the fabric of St.
Right.
Louis that
It's like saying like the Red Sox.
Right. That
Yeah.
would never happen. But you are talking about a market that's gone through losing 2 football teams, losing the football Cardinals back in the late 80s, then losing the Rams here about 6 years ago, where St. Louis also just went through a lawsuit and beat the NFL in a settlement. Now, a lot of people, me included, I wanted them to go to trial. So St. Louis won something like a $790 million settlement before the lawyers got their cut. So they beat the NFL, which is good, but it doesn't bring your team back. So that's where I tell you what, I feel bad.
And by the way, who gets that money? Like who gets that?
That's the thing. It's split up between St. Louis City, St. Louis County, and the Dome, basically the stadium, that authority to split it up. After the lawyers get 35%, you're talking $550 million. So again, it's a lot of money, but I don't think folks are going to feel that impact day to day. I mean, you just got all these cities also got a huge settlement from COVID, from the stimulus. So I wanted them to push the NFL to the limit with a trial and try to get big time punitive damages. I also think it'd be hilarious just because we do kind of hate the NFL here. I still watch the games, but we're not big fans of what they did to us, of the Rams, of Stan Kroenke. But also, I think it would have been hilarious because it would have been happening right now as the Rams are in the playoffs and the Rams are getting ready for their Super Bowl at SoFi Stadium that they're hoping to be in. There could have been a trial in St. Louis where some of these folks like Jerry Jones, Stan Kroenke, Roger Goodell are deposed in the middle of the NFL playoffs and a Super Bowl at SoFi Stadium. I think that would have been the greatest thing in the world. And that's why
that would have been amazing.
Yeah, that's why I'm ticked about it, because people in St. Louis, some are saying, oh, you beat the NFL, you got $790 million. And my point is the national media was just getting on board. And here's how I look at this. When that settlement was reached, I promise you, the NFL and Stan Kroenke popped champagne. They were happy with that settlement.
Yep.
And that's where, to me, it shows you did not maximize what you could have got.
It's like settling a class action where then the company's like, dude, writing this check is a drop for me. So now that you're all done and I'm quote unquote not technically liable for anything, I'm admitting no guilt or whatever they say, right? That's the same. Like, so they can go, okay, so this case is closed and we don't have to answer any more questions. I'm with you. Imagine if under, the idea of perjury and penalties, you could get people to on the stand to answer certain questions. I mean, what could you find out about what was really going on? Collusion, right? The idea of like organized deals happening probably years ago.
Oh, 100%.
Years ago to like, here's the plan,
Well, that's why they settled. I mean, we could do a 2-hour podcast on this. And if folks want to check my YouTube, I have a million videos on this because this is all we talked about for the last year, but really for the last 6 years.
So can I ask you this?
Yeah.
If would the city, would St. Louis right now, they would welcome a team back? If you got an expansion team, they'd be like, we're all in, or would they be gun shy with the past?
So if you asked football fans, that I think overwhelmingly they'd say yes, we would take a team again. There's also talk of the Chargers, remember, because the Chargers moved from San Diego. Look, LA does not need 2 teams.
No,
they don't. The other day, I don't know if you saw the interview, Matthew Stafford's wife was on a podcast describing how in that last regular season game, they're playing the 49ers, and Matthew Stafford has to be in a silent count in his own stadium because there were so many 49er fans there. So that's, by the way, for the Rams that still have all that brand identity with LA. The Chargers, there's nobody going to those games. So they don't need 2 teams there. So if we would have got an expansion team or the Chargers coming here, I think the fans would have been all for it. The problem was, I don't think the politicians wanted it. And again, not to dive too deep into this, but to me, maximizing either your monetary amount or the pipe dream, it could have been a pipe dream to potentially get another team, whether it's an expansion team or the Chargers. That went in direct conflict with what the lawyers wanted, which I understand. I would do the same if I was a lawyer, where you have a guaranteed $790 million settlement. You're getting 35%. That is a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush versus
for sure.
You win the trial, but then they'll appeal forever. Maybe you lose in the appellate court, or also it's years until you ever see that money. So that's where I do think the lawyers, although I applaud them for what they did, they wanted to get paid. And to me, if you really wanted to push the limits of the NFL, you had to go to trial and you had to win a trial, which, oh, by the way, was in the city of St. Louis. I mean, come on now. You think a jury?
That's pretty good.
You think a jury in St. Louis was going to be fair whatsoever to the Rams and Stan Kroenke? Zero chance of that.
No way. Oh, man, that would have been great.
Yeah.
That would have been unbelievable. Now, my last question about NFL and St. Louis is, would you take the Jets?
Any team. Any team. So, again, this is kind of one of those inside jokes here, especially on the radio show I've done the last several years with these guys. So, we basically, you lose your team 6 years ago, you're mad about it, but then you joke about it. And we rip on the Rams, but we're not losing sleep over it. But the funny thing we like doing is anytime there's an article written about any franchise, doesn't matter if it's NBA, NFL, if there's any stadium conflict whatsoever, we'll tweet out, oh, like for example, the New Orleans Pelicans. Let's bring the Pelicans back home to St. Louis where they truly belong. And there's no ties. There's no ties to St. Louis whatsoever.
Right.
The Jacksonville Jaguars and Shad Khan, who actually wanted to buy the Rams back, they're always talking about London. They need a new stadium. So we're always saying, bring the Jaguars back home. Of course, we've always loved Mark Brunell and Keenan
Maurice
Jones-Drew, the New Orleans Pelicans. Bring those Pelicans back with Zion Williamson, who, I mean, you can't walk down the street in St. Louis and not see a Zion Williamson jersey and a Mark Brunell jersey. So we like to then torture other fan bases, even though we didn't like what we went through. We like to try to torture them of taking their teams now.
I mean, that's true. You've just, only because we got on the podcast, you put away your Mercedes Lewis jersey. So
correct.
That's good. That's very good of you.
No doubt. And we even with Urban Meyer, we said, this is the perfect time. It didn't work down there. Urban Meyer, he was sniffing around at the bars with the young co-eds. Maybe you just need to change the scenery, Jackson. Well, just come to St. Louis. We'll embrace you.
I mean, the story is, I guess, over, quote unquote, now, but do you want to, I mean, can we analyze Urban Meyer for 2 seconds?
100 million%.
Just what, psychologically, what world are you living in where you just feel like you're untouchable? Like, you're high profile, yet you think like, no one's watching. I can do whatever. Where's that disconnect come from? Because you're the college guy, you're the man for so long. Is that what it is?
I think some of those guys, and I'm an Ohio State fan, remember. So I never really liked Urban Meyer, the person. And I can promise you, I said this back in the day. I love the fact that he never lost. Ohio State went 13-1 every year, won the Big Ten every year, won a national championship, but he was never a person you could really kind of get behind in the sense, oh, he's our guy, because all he cares about is winning. You can go back to Florida, where his entire team was arrested all the time. He's always faking heart attacks to leave a job. Oh, then he's better the next year. Now I signed a contract with my family to tell them I'm not going to be all football. I'm going to walk on the treadmill for 45 minutes and then I'll be good. And then, yeah, you go to Columbus. I think it was his bar, by the way. That meme of him, here's what it comes down to. He was so shit hammered. Like, they're not winning any games. He's at his own bar. He's feeling good again. Hey, remember when I was at Ohio State? I got my Ohio State quarter zip with the logo. This is my town. They love me.
Was the collar up, maybe?
Collar up, looking good. He was hammered because, I mean, when you looked at his eyes, that was a man who didn't know what was going on. Then the woman's dancing on him, good-looking lady. But also, he said, oh, I should have walked away, as if he didn't do anything. We all saw the hand play going on also, as if, was that an accident? I mean, we all saw this. So look,
freeze it right there. Freeze it. Freeze that frame right there.
Right. I mean, that's the other thing. Everybody is the greatest investigative journalist now. Everybody
is amazing.
Yeah. It's the Zapruder film. You know why the Zapruder film was so valuable? Because no one else was shooting that day. Whereas now, every single person at any given moment could have the most valuable piece of video. Whoever shot that video in that Columbus bar, that video was probably played more than any other video for that week in the world, I'm guessing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe that's the start of a good cameraman career for that guy. And I love your comment about Urban Meyer's heart attacks, because I literally just got this image of like him, like soccer player injury, like he's rolling around, grabbing the wrong side of his chest, looking up, like, is anyone like, that's fantastic. If that was choreographed to get out of jobs and into jobs, I don't know, that's kind of genius.
Right. And so I think there was some of that, just in the sense of, like, I think he had some legit health issues, but also if you have a health issue and you just went 7-5 and you don't have good recruits coming in and your team is being constantly ridiculed for being in jail, maybe that's the time to take a year off. Oh, look, Ohio State opens up. Oh, that's a nice job. But here's the other part. I joke about him faking the heart attack, but that dude also, he is so obsessed with winning. How many different times have you seen Urban Meyer doubled over on the field after a play? Remember that time they lost? I think it was a college football game. Remember the sad pizza where after the
Oh
game
yeah.
they got blown out by whoever. He's sitting on the golf cart eating the little Papa John's mini individual pizza they gave every player. And here's just sad Urban Meyer like eating his pizza like a little child, just so forlorn.
Throwing the crust at the box.
Right.
All right. So I mean, St. Louis is baseball, baseball, baseball. It's a huge part. So I mean, you tell me, you're involved, you're watching it every day. The lockout deal, I mean, are they going to, spring training going to happen? Are they going to start on time? Like what's your take on this?
So I just think it's so embarrassing for a sport that I
Yeah.
love. I love baseball more than any other sport. And yet still
Yeah.
they don't realize that look, your audience is old folks. And you already weren't doing a good job of grabbing the young viewer or grabbing the young fan. And now you're going to do this. And what I thought was the most hypocritical and just stupid was so the owners lock out the players right there 1st of December. So I understood that they weren't going to do anything until after the holidays. I get that. That was reported wild. They're not going to meet and all that. But then
Right.
you have Christmas, you have New Year's. That first Monday after the holidays, that's the day that everybody kind of gets back to work in life. All the offices, right? People are back. People are off vacation. It's time to kind of get back to work after the holidays. And the first day there was a report they're not meeting and nothing is scheduled. And I'm thinking you just took the whole month off for the holidays, which I get. Now it's time to hammer this out. This is like January 3rd or 4th. This is about 6 weeks before pitchers and catchers report, which is usually around the middle of February. And you're still not talking. And I know baseball this week or last week, they threw out a proposal. I think I just read today that the players are going to respond. I don't think they're that close. And I would say, I think we're going to have a season. I don't know if it's 162. At this point, I mean, what day is it? I should know because my daughter's birthday. It's January 19th.
The 19th, yeah.
So we're less than a month from pitchers and catchers reporting. And I don't think they're close. So I don't think spring training is going to start on time.
I mean, here's what I'm thinking, like big picture. Like, what would it take as a league, as owners? You know what I mean? Sometimes I view all these people like literally as like the villains in their castle. You know what I mean? Like, like they like pretend like it's for the people and the fans, but it's like behind closed doors. I just don't believe you. I think it's just bottom lines and dollars and cents. And because to your point, like, I mean, you're already struggling with building a new generation of baseball fans, and the game can be really slow. It can take forever. I mean, I'll go to anything live because it's always amazing, but you're not catching me on a Tuesday night, or you with where we are in life watching a 3.5 hour anything, let alone, early season game in the middle. It's like, it's just not going to happen. So their plan is just to kind of, again, be like, all right, fans, we're just going to take our time and battle out over the CBA and all this fancy talk. And it's like, can it be more clear that like, it's not about fans? Like they're not the number one thing. This is this is a money situation, period.
Which is funny or hilarious if you think about it, because the fans are your customers.
That's it.
I think they forget. So I think they look at it. We always say billionaires versus millionaires, but where does that money come from? It comes from human beings either going to the park to watch the games, buy tickets, buy concessions, or human beings watching you on TV.
So you can sell ads. Yeah.
Right. Ads and these ridiculous TV deals you're getting with the regional cable packages, with ESPN, with Turner and all that. So I think they forget that even though it is all about the money, where does that money come from? That comes from your fans, which here's another part. Not only, and this is my favorite sport, baseball is boring because there's less action than has ever been. It's all about striking out guys, home runs and walks. Walks are great. If you're a hitter, you get paid. On base percentage is a great stat, but it's a super boring stat. Walks are boring as hell. this is where,
especially when it's like a 15 pitch walk or
oh,
something. You're like, oh my God.
this is where I always say this. I think the national baseball fan can appreciate this. You and I both grew up with Yankees, Red Sox,
Yeah.
Jeter, and the Red Sox breaking the curse. And I'm telling you, you know this. Sunday Night Baseball, John Miller, Joe Morgan, the voices of baseball. But it seemed like every other week in the 2000s, it was Yankees, Red Sox,
Mm-hmm.
4.5 hour games. Everybody, every single batter, when Theo Epstein took over the Red Sox and went all Moneyball, that was all about on base percentage, walks, seeing more pitches per plate appearance. Those were the most boring game. There were 4.5 hours. Everybody was seeing 9 pitches. That
Kevin
was your
Youkilis.
Kevin Youkilis, the Greek god of walks from
Uh-huh.
Moneyball. That was your signature property, Sunday Night Baseball. And it was Yankees Red Sox for 4.5 hours. That's our generation. That's what we grew up with. And by the way, we have much more patience than the younger generation that they can't pay attention for more than 2 seconds to anything.
Exactly. I mean, it's true. And that's when I lived in Boston the first time, because I lived there twice. That's when I would watch Nesson, the local network, Tuesday night, and I could watch a 4-hour game, no problem. Because I was like, this is amazing. And you could just go down to Lansdowne, even if you don't have tickets, just hang at the bars there while the game's going on. And I'm sure it's the same in St. Louis. And it's like, you're guaranteed an amazing time, So like, yeah, if the game was just on somewhere, that's something to do in those kinds of towns, period. Like, oh, good, there's a game on. You know what it's not a good time to do? Stand-up comedy, because that's where I was doing comedy. And if there's a game, I would look at the schedule, and if there's a game on and you had to perform somewhere, you're like, dude, nobody's coming. And it's almost weird if you do show up as an audience when the Reds, especially if there's an important anything going on with the Red Sox, the Bruins, Patriots. I'd be like, what is this crowd going to be? 7 people.
So you made me think of something that I've talked about with, I don't know if you know, so Greg Warren is a comedian who's from St. Louis, and he was a good wrestler. I think he wrestled at Mizzou even. So he's big into wrestling, and he's a comedian that, he's toured the last 20 years or so. And we have him on a radio show a couple times a year. And one time he had this great bit about if you're doing a comedy show during the winter and you watch the local news, and that's your weekend. You're in St. Louis, you're at the Funny Bone, whatever it
Right.
is, Friday,
Right.
Saturday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whatever it is. And then you watch the local news. And that's going to be Snowmageddon. And by the way, I worked in this business. Let me tell you something. Weather is where you make your money. If you're in weather, if the other stations are in weather, you better stay in severe weather. And there's almost a battle of the last station to stay in severe weather, even if there's only 2 inches of snow. And he used to tell me how he got so pissed if the weather guy said, "Oh, we're going to get 7 inches." People are going to the grocery store, they're getting their milk and their bread. And so your comedy show, everybody's assuming the weather is going to be really bad. And sure, every once in a while it is, but even the thought of that prevents, I'm guessing, people from coming out to your shows.
100%. 100%. I mean, and then there's seasonal stuff depending on where you go. Like summer can be real hit and miss in certain towns where it's like, oh, why is it slow? It's like, oh, it's summer. Everyone's out doing something. Basically, they're saying everybody's out doing something better than watching you. You know what I mean? It's like, what? Because the guy owns an ATV. So he can't be here at night. Like, come on.
Yeah, that to me, that's a weak excuse. You need to be more specific than just saying a season.
I
Why
think
aren't they
so.
here? Summer. Oh, of
Yeah.
course, summer. Yes. Okay. Summer.
Yeah, I'd like a little better rejection than just the general idea that like it's brighter out later.
That's hilarious, man. So what do you think? This is our first episode.
This is it. But before I let you go, listen to me. Before I let
Yeah.
you go, because we are lock pick sports bettors. You know that.
Yes.
So I want your NFL pick, and I'm gonna give you mine, and I'm gonna read these lines to you right now. This is as I have them.
Okay.
Tennessee given 3.5 to Cincinnati. Green Bay -5.5 to San Fran.
Yeah.
The Bucks -3 Rams. KC -2.5 Buffalo. What do you got? You got to pick one game. Who are you taking?
Okay. So I just picked, as we say, we call it the best bet. This is my best bet.
What do you got?
Okay, so I'm trying to think here. Just off the top of my head there, I kind of like, so if I'm getting the Bengals with 3.5, I'm getting 3.5.
Yep, 3.5.
I think I like the Bengals getting 3.5. I think
That's
that would,
literally my pick. I'm not even kidding.
yeah. It's hard to beat the Packers in Lambeau, but the 49ers are very, very underrated. The game I'm looking forward to the most is Bills Chiefs, but I don't really have a hot take on who's going to win that game. And then, you know what? It wouldn't surprise me though if your Bucks down there actually take care of business against the Rams.
That'd be my second pick. And knowing me, I would parlay these and then also add in some sort of over unders to get my ticket up to 5-6, um, 5-6 lines. But that would be my second too. But so we're in the same boat here. All right. So anybody listening, I mean,
Fade it.
if you have
Fade it.
enough time and you can pull equity out of your house, get that on the Bengals to cover. Right? I mean, this is good advice. This is good financial advice. If you can borrow money from like your family, close friends, your boss at work, you throw it all on the Bengals. Okay? Because it's a lock. Because it's a lock.
Yeah, this would be perfect though for this podcast. I called that. It would be a perfect start of this podcast if we can come back and we can tape next week. And so both, the Titans have won by 21 points and also the Rams have won by 17 points.
Yeah, that's okay. We can always start the podcast under a new name next week and just kind of like flip our backgrounds or whatever, and it'll be fine. It'll be totally fine.
And also, you just don't mention it. You only mention last week's picks if they were good. Okay.
That's right. I try the same strategy with my wife. It never works, but yeah, thanks.
Love it. All right, Martin, good times. I called that first edition, YouTube, all the different podcast platforms. That was fun. We're going to do it every week. I can't wait, man.
It was good stuff, man. See you next week.